At 6:18 in the morning, the house was so quiet, I could hear the refrigerator breathing. No texts, no knock on my door. I looked out at the driveway and saw nothing but empty asphalt. I opened the tracking app and watched 17 little dots moving in a neat convoy. An evacuation without me. Then my mother's tablet lit up with a notification from a new group chat, Slay Team, No Jade. My name is Jade Warren, and at 34 years old, I had long ago accepted that silence was a luxury I rarely could afford. But this silence was different. It was heavy, textured, and suffocating. It was 6:18 in the morning on the 23rd of December, a day that had been highlighted in red on my Google Calendar for 4 months. I sat up in bed, the duvet pooling around my waist. My internal clock had woken me up precisely 2 minutes before my alarm was set to go off, a habit born of years working in high-stakes compliance. Normally, the house would be vibrating by now. My mother, Diane, was a loud riser, the type of woman who believed that banging cabinet doors was a form of communication. My father, Robert, usually had the television on at volume 40 in the living room, catching the early weather report for the drive. My younger sister, Marin, would be running up and down the hallway, shouting about a missing charger or a misplaced boot. Today, however, the house was a tomb. I swung my legs out of bed, my bare feet hitting the hardwood floor. It was cold. The heat had been turned down, which was strange because my father constantly complained if the thermostat dropped below 72 degrees. I walked into the hallway, tying my silk robe tighter around my waist. "Mom," I called out. My voice sounded flat, absorbed instantly by the walls. "Nolan." No answer. I moved toward the kitchen, the heart of this sprawling suburban home that I had bought 3 years ago. I paid the mortgage. I paid the insurance. I paid for the repairs when the water heater died last winter. Yet, for the past week, as my family gathered here in preparation for our departure, I had felt like a guest in my own property, a guest who was also the maid. The kitchen confirmed my suspicion that they were awake, or at least had been. The scene before me was a masterclass in casual disrespect. The smell of coffee was stale, hanging in the air with a bitter tang. The pot on the counter was empty, a dark, burnt ring at the bottom indicating the burner had been left on until the liquid evaporated. I walked to the island. A plate sat there with a half-eaten Belgian waffle, a pool of syrup congealing around the edges. A fork rested on the rim, sticky and precarious. Beside it were 3 used mugs, stained with lipstick and coffee rings, clustered together like abandoned monuments. The dishwasher was right there. It was empty and ready to be loaded. Yet, the sink was piled high with cereal bowls, spoons, and the skillet used to heat the syrup. They had eaten breakfast. Without me. A slow, creeping numbness began to spread from my chest to my fingertips. I looked at the digital clock on the oven. 6:22. We were scheduled to leave at 7. My plan. The spreadsheet I had circulated 3 times was specific. Wheels up at 7 to beat the holiday traffic out of the city and make the ascent to Granite Hollow before the snowstorm hit. I walked to the living room window and pulled back the sheer curtain. My driveway was a vast, empty expanse of gray concrete. My father's SUV was gone. Marin's convertible was gone. The rental van I had paid for to transport the luggage and the friends Marin had insisted on bringing was gone. And Nolan's car, my fiancé's sleek black sedan, which I had helped him pick out last year, was missing from its usual spot. Gone, all of them. I felt a vibration in my pocket, a phantom notification, but when I pulled my phone out, the screen was blank. No texts, no missed calls, no frantic, "Where are you?" messages. I unlocked my phone and opened the Find My app. The map loaded, the grid of the city appearing in muted grays and greens. I zoomed out. There they were. 17 little contact photos, clustered together in a tight, orderly formation, moving west on the interstate. They were already 60 miles away. I watched the dots move for a full minute. It was mesmerizing in the most horrific way. It looked like a military convoy, a coordinated evacuation. They were driving at the speed limit, making good time. They were together. They were safe. and they had left me behind. I lowered the phone, my hand trembling slightly, not from sadness, but from a sudden, violent drop in blood sugar or adrenaline. I couldn't tell which. I turned back to the kitchen island to steady myself, and that was when I saw it. My mother's iPad. It was propped up against the fruit bowl, the smart cover folded back. The screen was dark, but as I reached out to move it, the motion sensor caught my movement. The screen flooded with light. My mother never logged out of anything. She claimed technology was hostile and refused to learn how to close tabs. The Messages app was open, and right there, at the very top of the list, was a group chat I had never been invited to. The name of the group hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. Slay Team No Jade. The cruelty of the name was so childish, so high school, that I almost laughed, but the laugh died in my throat as I read the preview of the last message. It was a picture sent by Marin. I tapped the screen. I didn't care about privacy anymore. The concept of privacy had evaporated the moment they left my driveway without waking me. I scrolled up. My eyes scanned the timestamps, reconstructing the timeline of my own betrayal. Yesterday, 11:30 p.m. Mom. She's finally asleep. I turned off the hallway monitor so she won't hear us packing the last few things. Marin, thank God. If she wakes up, she's going to start checking our bags for approved snacks again. I can't deal with the lecture on sodium levels tonight. Aunt Carol. Are we sure about the time 4 in the morning is early? Diane. Dad, if we don't leave by 4, we get stuck in the traffic, and then Jade starts stressing about the schedule. You know how she gets? The sighing, the checking the watch. It kills the whole mood. Marin, seriously, she's such a vibe killer. I just want to get to the mountain and relax without feeling like I'm on a corporate retreat. She treats Christmas like a compliance audit. I gripped the edge of the marble counter. My knuckles turned white. A compliance audit. I was the one who made sure Dad took his blood pressure medication. I was the one who navigated the insurance claims when Aunt Carol slipped on the ice last year. I was the one who ensured Marin didn't get sued by brand partners for breach of contract. They called it controlling. I called it keeping them alive and out of court. I scrolled down to this morning. Today, 3:45 a.m. Nolan car is packed. I disabled the garage door silent mode so it won't beep when we open it. She's out cold. I stopped breathing. Nolan, my Nolan, the man who had held my hand last night and told me he couldn't wait to see the snow with me. He had disabled the alarm on the garage door. He had actively engineered the silence that greeted me. Marin. Okay, everyone is in the vehicles. Let's roll. Freedom, friend of Marin, unknown number. Wait, are we really just leaving her? Won't she freak out, Mom? She'll be fine. She can drive up later if she wants. Or she can stay. Honestly, it might be better if she stays. She's been so high-strung lately. We all need a break from the intensity. Dad. We'll text her when we get to the pass. Tell her we got confused about the time or something. She'll get over it. She always does. She's tough. She's tough. That was the sentence that had defined my life. Jade is tough. Jade can handle it. Jade doesn't need comfort. She provides it. I scrolled to the most recent messages. Sent just 20 minutes ago. Marin. Just realized we left the waffle maker on. Oops. Someone text her in like an hour so the house doesn't burn down. Cousin Tyler lol. Imagine her face right now. And then, the final dagger. The message that severed the last thread connecting me to the people I called family. Nolan, don't worry about the waffle maker. Worry about the lift passes. Did anyone grab the physical vouchers, Marin? I think Jade has them in her folder. Whatever. We can just reprint them at the lodge. Nolan, yeah. As long as Jade's card is on file for the incidentals and the booking, we're good. If she doesn't come, it just means more room in the hot tub. As long as Jade's card is on file, I stared at the words. The air in the kitchen seemed to drop 10 degrees. I wasn't hyperventilating. I wasn't crying. My heart rate, surprisingly, was slowing down. It was the calm of absolute clarity. For years, I had told myself a story. I told myself that my family was chaotic but loving. I told myself that my fiancé was laid back while I was type A. and that we balanced each other out. I told myself that my role as the organizer, the payer, the fixer, was my way of showing love, and their acceptance of it was their way of needing me. I was wrong. They didn't need me. They needed what I provided. I wasn't a daughter, a sister, or a future wife. I was a logistics coordinator. I was an ATM. I was a travel agent. I was a service provider. And apparently, a service provider with a bad attitude who could be discarded once the contract, or in this case, the vacation booking was secured. I looked around the kitchen again. The dirty dishes weren't just laziness. They were a statement. They left them because they knew I would wash them. They left at 4:05 in the morning because they knew I would follow. They assumed I would panic, jump in my car, speed to catch up, and arrive at the resort breathless and apologetic, begging to be let back into the circle. They assumed I would pay the $16,800 bill for the villa, smile through their jokes about me being slow, and ensure their holiday was perfect while I slept in the overflow room. They banked on my desperation for their approval. They bet everything on the fact that Jade never quits, Jade never cancels, Jade never lets the family down. I walked over to the refrigerator. It was a massive stainless steel double-door unit I had bought with my bonus 2 years ago. I opened the door. The cold air rushed out to meet me, matching the chill inside my veins. Inside, the shelves were stocked with the overflow food that wouldn't fit in the coolers they had taken. Expensive cheeses, premium steaks, bottles of champagne, all paid for by me, intended for a celebration of togetherness that was a lie. The white LED light from the fridge cast a harsh, clinical glow across my face. I caught my reflection in the glass of a wine bottle. I looked pale, ghostly, but my eyes were dark and hard. I wasn't sad. Sadness requires hope, and I had none left. I was something else entirely. I was efficient. I was the compliance officer who had just discovered a massive fraud in the ledger. And when you find fraud, you don't cry. You audit. You freeze assets. You shut down operations. I reached out and grabbed a bottle of cold water, unscrewing the cap with a sharp twist. The silence of the house was no longer oppressive. It was expectant. It was waiting to see what I would do. If I am just the power source, I whispered to the empty room, my voice steady and devoid of tremors, then today is the day I pull the plug. I took a long drink of water, closed the refrigerator door with a solid thud, and turned to face the empty house. The time for being the dutiful daughter was over. The time for being the tough one was over. It was 6:30 in the morning. The banks opened at 9, but the customer service line for the Canyon Crest Alpine Estate was open 24/7. I didn't rush. I walked calmly to the living room, picked up my laptop, and sat down on the sofa. I opened the screen. The blue light illuminated the darkness of the room. I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to cancel. The blue light of the laptop screen felt abrasive against my tired eyes, but the spreadsheet I had pulled up was a thing of sterile, organized beauty. It was titled, Christmas Logistics 2024, a document I had created in August, back when the summer heat still shimmered off the pavement. I scrolled through the tabs, my finger hovering over the trackpad. Every cell, every color-coded row represented hours of my life that I had donated to people who had just left me standing in an empty kitchen. I clicked on the tab marked Medical and Dietary. It was a testament to how deeply I managed their lives. For my father, Robert, I had researched and procured a specific prescription of acetazolamide because at his age, the altitude change in Wyoming often triggered dizziness. I had cross-referenced it with his blood pressure medication to ensure there were no contraindications. For my mother, Diane, I had packed a separate travel kit containing her specific migraine relief, the kind you could only get from a compounding pharmacy in the city, because the over-the-counter stuff made her drowsy. Then there was the food. I navigated to the catering tab. Marin had insisted her new friends, a trio of aspiring lifestyle influencers she was trying to impress, had strictly curated diets, no gluten for one, no nightshades for another, a strictly keto regimen for the third. I had spent 3 weeks exchanging emails with the private chef at the resort, to design a menu that felt cohesive rather than restrictive. I had reviewed ingredient lists for hidden sugars. I had sourced a specific brand of almond flour they preferred. I had done all of this while working 50-hour weeks at my actual job. And then there was the venue itself. Canyon Crest Alpine Estate in Granite Hollow, Wyoming, was not just a hotel. It was a fortress of exclusivity nestled in the Teton Range. It was the kind of place that did not advertise on travel websites. You had to be referred. You had to be vetted. I had secured our reservation through a senior partner at my firm who owned a timeshare nearby. I clicked on the Financials tab. The numbers stared back at me, bolded and highlighted in green. $16,800. That was the total cost for 5 nights. The package included the Summit Lodge, a 5-bedroom glass and timber villa with a heated wraparound deck. It included the private chef services for breakfast and dinner. It included 7 all-access lift passes, skipping the lines at the gondola. It included a daily spa credit that my mother had already earmarked for a hot stone massage. It included the private shuttle service that was currently transporting them from the airport to the mountain, sipping sparkling water I had paid for. $16,800. It was a staggering amount of money. I earned a good salary as a senior risk analyst at Blackridge Compliance Systems. But this wasn't pocket change. This was my savings for a down payment on an investment property. This was a year of aggressive budgeting. When I had booked it, Nolan had kissed my forehead and told me it was an investment in our future memories. My father had clapped me on the shoulder and said he was proud I could provide for the family. They had let me pay because, as my mother put it was just easier if one person handled the booking. "You're so good with the details, Jade," she had said, waving a hand dismissively. "Put it on your card to hold the reservation, and we will figure out the split later." The split never happened. It never did. There was always an excuse. Dad's stocks were down. Marin was between gigs. Nolan was saving for the wedding. I had absorbed the cost, telling myself that their happiness was the repayment. I looked away from the laptop and back to the iPad, which was still glowing with the treacherous transcript of the Slay Team chat. I needed to see more. I needed to understand the architecture of this plan. I scrolled back 2 weeks. December 10th. Marin. Okay. Looking at the floor plan for the villa, the master suite is obviously for Mom and Dad. The 2 king suites with the balcony view are perfect for me and the girls. We need that lighting for content. Nolan, I'll take the queen room on the 2nd floor. It has the fireplace. Mom, where does that leave Jade Marin? There's that room off the mudroom, the one the listing calls the overflow suite. It's got a bunk bed. It's fine. She's barely going to be in the room anyway. She'll be busy coordinating everything. Nolan, that works. Plus, it's closer to the kitchen so she can let the chef in early. I felt a cold burn in my throat. The overflow suite was essentially a glorified closet designed for children or traveling staff. They had assigned me the servants' quarters in a villa I was paying for, and Nolan, my fiancé, had agreed. He hadn't fought for me to be in the room with the fireplace. He hadn't suggested we share a suite like an engaged couple. He had relegated me to the mudroom, but the worst betrayal wasn't about the room. It was about the house I was currently sitting in. I scrolled to a conversation from 3 days ago. Marin, I'm actually low-key worried about my apartment being empty over Christmas. Porch pirates are insane this year. Mom, we can't leave anyone behind. Marin, it's a family trip. Marin, I know, but Jade isn't really into skiing, and she's always talking about how tired she is. Maybe she stays. She could watch the house. Honestly, it would be safer. Plus, the car ride is going to be so cramped with all my gear. Nolan, it would solve the luggage issue, but we need her card for the check-in deposit. Marin, she can just add you as an authorized user, right? Or give you the physical card. Just tell her the resort requires the booking holder's card. But if she calls ahead, they might waive it. Dad, let's not make it a thing yet. If she comes, she comes. If she drags her feet, maybe we suggest she follows us up a day later. If she misses the flight, well, that's on her. I sat back, the leather of the sofa creaking under my weight. It wasn't a sudden decision at 4 a.m. This had been a negotiation. Marin wanted a house sitter, Nolan wanted my credit limit, my parents wanted a friction-free holiday. They had manufactured a scenario where my absence was the optimal outcome for everyone except me. My mind drifted back 20 years. I was 14. My parents had forgotten to pick me up from swim practice. It was snowing, and the pool was locked. I waited outside for 2 hours, shivering in my parka. When I finally walked the 3 miles home, my mother didn't apologize. She was in the middle of hosting a dinner party. She looked at me, blue-lipped and shaking, and said, "Oh, Jade, thank goodness you're so independent. I knew you'd figure it out. Go change. We need ice." I went and got the ice. That was the contract I had signed as a child. If I was needy, I was a burden. If I was useful, I was tolerated. If I was silent and solved my own problems, I was praised. They had trained me to be the person who would fix the itinerary even as they drove away without me. They were counting on that training now. They expected me to be hurt, yes, but ultimately compliant. They expected me to text them, "Have fun, I'll hold down the fort." Because that is what Jade does. Jade absorbs the impact so the family doesn't have to. I looked at the Black Ridge Compliance Systems logo on my laptop wallpaper. My job was literally to identify risk and enforce contracts. I spent my days reading fine print that other people ignored. I found loopholes. I found exit clauses. I navigated back to the Canyon Crest reservation portal. I didn't look at the photos of the snow-capped peaks or the steaming hot tubs. I scrolled all the way to the bottom, to the section titled Terms and Conditions, the text so small it looked like gray dust. I hit Command F and typed cancellation. There were 3 paragraphs. Most of them detailed the strict non-refundable policy for cancellations made within 30 days of the trip. Typically, at this stage, I would lose everything. The money was gone. But then, my eyes caught a subclause in Section 4, Paragraph B, Primary Booking Holder Authority. I leaned in, reading the legalese with the hunger of a wolf. Regardless of guest list composition or split payment arrangements, the singular booking holder retains absolute and sole cancellation authority up until the moment of physical check-in. In the event of security concerns or unauthorized party changes, the booking holder may terminate the reservation immediately. While financial refunds are subject to review, the revocation of access is instantaneous. Revocation of access is instantaneous. I checked the time. 7:15. The flight from the city to Jackson Hole was 2 hours. Then the drive to Granite Hollow was another hour. They were currently in the air. They would land, pick up the rental SUV I had paid for, and drive to the estate. They wouldn't arrive at the Canyon Crest gate until at least 11 o'clock Mountain Time. They had not checked in. I was the booking holder, the only name on the contract, the only signature on the liability waiver, the only credit card on the file. They thought the money was a communal resource because we were family. They thought $16,800 bought them the right to treat me like a logistics app they could delete when they needed storage space. But in the eyes of the law, and in the eyes of the Canyon Crest Alpine Estate, I was the only person who existed. I closed the spreadsheet. I closed the chat log. I didn't need to see any more insults. I didn't need to read Nolan making jokes about my credit score. I took a deep breath. The air in the house was still cold, but the cold inside me had solidified into something sharp and useful. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw the waffle iron through the window. That was what a hysterical daughter would do. I was not a daughter right now. I was a client. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. I scrolled down to Canyon Crest Concierge. I had spoken to them so many times over the last few months that the number was in my favorites. My thumb hovered over the call button. $16,800, I said aloud, testing the weight of the words one last time. It was the price of a luxury vacation, but it was also the price of my freedom. If I let this slide, if I let them check in and enjoy the fires I paid for, I would be paying this bill for the rest of my life. Not in money, but in dignity. I pressed the green button. The phone rang. 1 ring, 2 rings. Good morning. This is the Canyon Crest Alpine Estate. My name is Elena. A cheerful, polished voice answered, "How may I assist you this lovely morning?" I sat up straighter, my voice dropping into my professional register, the tone I used when I was about to fail a company's audit. "Hello, Elena. This is Jade Warren. I have a reservation starting today at the Summit Lodge." "Oh, Ms. Warren? Yes, of course. We are so excited to welcome your group. Chef Marco has the kitchen prepped and I need you to listen to me very carefully." "Elena," I interrupted, my voice smooth and devoid of any warmth. "I am invoking my right as the primary booking holder. I am canceling the entire reservation." "Excuse me?" Elena's falter was audible. "I am canceling the booking, the villa, the chef, the lift passes, the spa appointments, all of it, effectively immediately." "But Ms. Warren, your party is due to arrive in a few hours." "The non-refundable policy." "I know the policy," I said, "and I am not asking for a refund yet. I am telling you to deny access." "I need to be very clear, Elena," I said, my voice steady, cutting through her confusion like a diamond cutter through glass. "I am not asking if I can cancel. I am informing you that the unauthorized party currently approaching your main gate has no legal standing to enter the property. I am the sole booking holder. I am the only signatory on the liability waiver. And I am formally revoking all access privileges for the guests listed under my reservation. Right now." There was a pause on the line. I could hear the faint typing of a keyboard in the background, likely Elena frantically pulling up my file. When she spoke again, her cheerfulness had evaporated, replaced by a guarded professional caution. "Ms. Warren, I am looking at your file now. You are indeed the primary holder. However, I must remind you that per the terms agreed upon at the time of deposit, a cancellation less than 24 hours before arrival results in a total forfeiture of the booking fee. That is $16,800. We cannot offer a credit or a refund." "I am aware of the financial implications," I replied. I walked over to the window, looking out at my empty driveway. "I am not asking for my money back. Elena, I am paying $16,800 to ensure that the individuals in that convoy do not step 1 foot inside the Summit Lodge. Do you understand I am paying for the vacancy?" "I see," Elena stammered. This was clearly outside her usual script. She was used to people begging for refunds, not weaponizing the non-refundable clause. "So, just to confirm, you want us to deny entry at the gatehouse?" "Correct," I said, "but it goes beyond the gate. I need a full system purge. I want the digital keys for the villa deactivated. I want the QR codes for the lift passes voided. If they try to scan them at the gondola, I want the system to flash red. The private chef. Tell him to pack up his knives and go home. The spa appointments for Diane and Marin Warren, delete them. Ms. Warren, the chef has already started prep work for the welcome dinner," Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The elk is marinating. Then the staff can eat it," I said. "Or throw it out. It makes no difference to me. What matters is that my credit card is not charged for a single bottle of wine, a single massage, or a single lift ticket from this moment forward. I am removing my authorization for all incidental charges. If you allow them to charge anything to my card after this call, I will consider it fraud, and I will pursue it with my bank and my legal counsel." "Okay," Elena said, and I heard the decisive click of a mouse. "I am removing the authorized users now. The system is updating. Lift passes are voided. Gate codes are scrambled. I will radio the security team at the perimeter immediately." "Thank you," I said. "One more thing. When they arrive, and they will be there in approximately 40 minutes, please do not tell them I called. Simply tell them there is an issue with the booking holder's verification and that access is denied. Let them figure out the rest." "Understood, Ms. Warren," Elena said. There was a hint of nervous respect in her voice now. "Your reservation has been adjusted. Is there anything else?" "No, that will be all. Have a wonderful Christmas." Elena. "You too, Ms. Warren." I ended the call. The screen went black. The silence in the kitchen returned. But it felt different now. Before, it was the silence of abandonment. Now, it was the silence of a judge's chambers after the gavel has come down. I picked up the iPad again. I didn't open the chat. Instead, I opened the Find My app. The map refreshed. The cluster of 17 dots had moved. They had landed in Jackson Hole, picked up their rental cars, and were now navigating the winding roads up to Granite Hollow. I watched them move along the gray vein of the highway. They were moving fast, probably speeding. Marin would be in the passenger seat of the lead SUV, likely filming a story for her Instagram, talking about mountain vibes and family time. Nolan would be driving, probably rehearsing the speech he would give me later about how I needed to loosen up and pay the bill. I sat there and watched them for 30 minutes. It was the most gripping thing I had ever watched. At 11:12 Mountain Time, the dots slowed down. They bunched together. They had reached the main security gate of Canyon Crest. I zoomed in on the map until the satellite view showed the roof of the guardhouse. The dots stopped. I counted the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. By now, the uniformed guard would be stepping out of the booth. He would be asking for the name on the reservation. My father would roll down the window, smiling his charming smile, the one he used to get out of speeding tickets, and say, "The Warren party? It is under Jade Warren." The guard would type it in. He would see the red flag on the screen. Access denied. Booking holder revocation. I imagined the confusion. My father laughing, thinking it was a mistake. "Check again, son. We have the confirmation email right here." The guard would check again. The answer would be the same. "I am sorry, sir. The booking has been canceled by the owner. I cannot open the gate." I saw the dots shuffle slightly. Someone must have gotten out of a car. Probably Nolan. He would try to take charge. He would try to use his emergency access. He would hand over his credit card, thinking he could smooth it over, only to find out that the reservation wasn't just unpaid, it was deleted. The villa wasn't available anymore. Then, the explosion happened. It started with a single vibration on my phone, then another, then a continuous, angry buzz that rattled the phone against the marble countertop. I looked at the screen. Dad. 5 missed calls. Mom, 3 missed calls. Nolan, 4 missed calls. Marin text, WTF. The screen lit up with a call from Nolan. I let it ring. I watched his smiling face on the contact photo, a photo I had taken of him at our engagement party, dance on the screen. He looked so happy, so secure. The ringing stopped. Then a text came through. "Nolan Jade. Pick up the phone. There is a glitch at the gate. They are saying the reservation is canceled. Send me the confirmation code again. Now." I didn't answer. "Dad Jade. Answer your mother. Why is the guard saying you canceled? This isn't funny. We have a car full of people and it is freezing out here." Marin. "OMG. Jade, seriously. My friends are freezing. The guard won't let us in. Fix this immediately." Aunt Carol Jade. "Honey, I think there is a misunderstanding with the computer. Call the front desk." Nolan Jade. "Stop playing games. This is embarrassing. The guard is threatening to call the police if we don't turn around. Put the card back on file." I watched the messages stack up. They were frantic. They were angry. They were demanding. But as I scrolled through the barrage of abuse, I noticed the one thing that wasn't there. Not a single person asked, "Jade, where are you?" Not a single person asked Jade, "Are you okay?" Not one of them asked, "Why aren't you here with us?" They didn't care that I was missing. They only cared that my credit card was missing. If I had been in the car with them, they would have been yelling at me to fix it, since I wasn't there. They were yelling at my digital ghost. They viewed me as a malfunctioning appliance. When the toaster doesn't work, you don't ask the toaster how it's feeling. You hit it. You shake it. You demand it to make toast. Mom. Jade Elizabeth Warren. This is unacceptable behavior. We are your family. You cannot just leave us stranded on the side of a mountain. Do you have any idea how much this flight cost, Nolan? I'm going to use my card to book a motel. We will talk about this when you get here. You better have a damn good explanation. You are acting like a child. I laughed. A dry, sharp sound in the empty kitchen. I was acting like a child. I was the one who had just saved myself $16,000 plus interest. I was the one who had finally enforced the boundaries they had trampled on for decades. The dots on the map began to turn around. The neat convoy was breaking up. They were doing a U-turn, heading back down the mountain toward the highway. The dream vacation was over. The luxury villa with the heated floors and the private chef was sitting empty, waiting for guests who would never arrive. It was time to deliver the closing statement. I took a screenshot of the group chat on the iPad, the one named Slay Team, No Jade. I cropped it perfectly so the name was front and center, along with the timestamp of their departure and Nolan's joke about my credit card. I opened the family group chat, the official one, the one where they pretended to be nice. I attached the photo. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't need a long manifesto. I didn't need to explain my hurt feelings. They wouldn't understand feelings anyway. They only understood transactions. I typed Christmas without Jade delivered as requested. I hit send. I watched the read receipts appear almost instantly. Read by Mom. Read by Nolan. Read by Marin. The typing bubbles appeared immediately, a furious storm of 3 dots attempting to form excuses, lies, and accusations. I didn't wait to read them. I held down the power button on the side of my phone. Slide to power off. I swiped my thumb across the screen. The Apple logo spun for a second, and then the screen went black. I did the same to the iPad. I walked over to the landline phone on the wall, a relic I kept for emergencies, and unplugged the cord from the jack. The house was silent again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of being left behind. It was the silence of peace. It was the silence of a vault door closing, locking the treasures inside and keeping the thieves out. I looked at the clock. It was noon. I had the whole day ahead of me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have a single person to take care of. I walked to the pantry. I bypassed the kale chips I had bought for Marin. I reached to the top shelf and pulled down a box of the expensive Swiss chocolates I had bought as a hostess gift for the villa. I tore the plastic wrapper off. I opened the box. I took the biggest truffle, the one dusted in gold flakes, and popped it into my mouth. It tasted like victory. The chocolate truffle had barely melted on my tongue when the notification bell on my laptop chimed. It was a sharp, digital sound that usually signaled a work email or a calendar reminder, but today, it signaled something far more insidious. I leaned forward, the sugar rush fading into a cold, hard knot of suspicion. I had already canceled the resort. I had already cut off the credit card authorization for the trip. In my mind, the transaction was closed. But as I opened my banking portal, I realized that for my family, the transaction was the only thing that mattered. The screen refreshed, displaying my primary checking and credit card activity. The timestamp was 12:14 p.m., immediately following the rejection at the Canyon Crest gate. There was a flurry of activity on my platinum card. It looked like a desperate animal clawing at the walls of a cage. 12:20 p.m. Starbucks declined. 12:22 p.m. Chevron Station declined. 12:30 p.m. Motel 6. Jackson Hole declined. They were testing the perimeter. The moment the gate guard turned them away, they hadn't stopped to reflect on why I had done this. They hadn't tried to call me to apologize. Their first instinct was to see if the money tap was still flowing elsewhere. Nolan had tried to buy coffee, then gas, then, realizing they were homeless for the holiday, he had tried to book a cheap motel room. Seeing the word declined 3 times in red text gave me a grim satisfaction. But then a new alert popped up at the top of the dashboard. This one was not a transaction. It was a security flag. Alert unauthorized access attempt. Action request to add authorized user. Applicant Nolan Price. Status pending, 2-factor authentication. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. Nolan wasn't just trying to use the card, he was trying to change the account permissions. He was currently standing in a parking lot in Wyoming, freezing cold, using his phone to log into my banking app to add himself as a permanent authorized user so he could override the blocks I had put in place. He knew my password. The realization hit me with the force of a physical slap. Of course he knew it. 3 months ago, when I was drowning in work during the quarterly audit, I had asked him to help me pay the utility bills. I had given him the login. I had trusted him. I had thought we were partners building a life together. He wasn't my partner. He was a sleeper agent waiting for the right moment to seize control. I grabbed my phone, turning it back on just long enough to make a call. I didn't check the texts. I dialed the number on the back of my card immediately. "Welcome to Premium Services," the automated voice said. "Please enter your—" I punched 0 repeatedly until a human voice came on the line. "This is Marcus, account security. How can I help you?" "My account has been compromised," I said, my voice clipping with efficiency. "I need to freeze everything, now." "Okay, ma'am. Can I have your full name and the answer to your security question?" "Jade Warren. The name of my first pet is Barnaby." "Thank you. Ms. Warren, I see a request here pending approval for a Mr. Nolan Price. Should I—" "Deny it," I snapped. "And listen to me. Marcus, I want you to revoke all current authorized users. I want you to issue new card numbers for every single account I hold. And I need to reset my online access credentials immediately. The person attempting to access this account has my current password." "Understood. I am locking the profile now. No transactions will go through, even recurring ones. We are scrubbing the authorized user list. You will need to set up a new password and a new PIN. Do it." "I also see a secondary request here," Marcus said, his voice hesitant. "It looks like there was an attempt to change the mailing address on file to a P.O. box in Jackson Hole roughly 10 minutes ago. Did you authorize this?" My blood ran cold. They weren't just trying to spend money. They were trying to redirect the statements so I wouldn't see the damage they were about to do. If they had succeeded in changing the address and adding Nolan, they could have maxed out the card over the next 5 days, and I wouldn't have received a notification because the physical mail would be going to a box in Wyoming. "No," I said, gripping the phone so hard my fingers ached. "I did not authorize that. That is fraud. I am flagging it as such. The account is now on total lockdown. Ms. Warren, nobody is getting in without a verbal passphrase that we are going to set right now." I spent the next 40 minutes on the phone, building a digital fortress around my life. I set a passphrase that none of them would ever guess the name of the compliance software I used at work. I enabled biometric scanning. I changed my email passwords. I changed my cloud storage passwords. When I finally hung up, I felt exhausted, but also strangely invigorated. The adrenaline of the hunt was coursing through me. I turned back to my laptop. The banking threat was neutralized, but I needed to know how deep this went. Nolan had acted with too much confidence. He hadn't just guessed. He had assumed he had the right. I opened my email archive. I typed Nolan into the search bar. Hundreds of emails populated: wedding vendors, dinner reservations, cute notes from when we first started dating. I filtered them by attachments. I scrolled past the venue contracts and the catering menus. I was looking for something boring, something administrative. I found it. An email from 6 months ago. Subject: updated emergency forms. Insurance. I clicked it open. "Hey, babe," the email read. "I'm organizing the files for the life insurance policy and the joint wedding account. Just need you to sign these so I can file them with the broker. It's just standard beneficiary stuff and emergency contact info. Love you." I remembered this day. I was in a meeting with the SEC regulators. I had 5 minutes to eat lunch. I had opened the attachment, saw the sign here flags, and clicked through them via DocuSign without reading the fine print. I trusted him. I opened the PDF attachment now. It was not just beneficiary stuff. Buried on page 4, under a section titled Durable Power of Attorney for Financial Management Limited, was a clause. The undersigned grants Nolan Price the authority to act as an agent in matters of banking, real estate, and credit management in the event of the principal's absence or incapacity. My eyes narrowed. Absence or incapacity. The definition of absence was intentionally vague. If I was not present, say, if I was left behind at home while they were in Wyoming, he could argue that he was acting as my agent to manage the vacation expenses. He had pre-filled the form. He had set this up half a year ago. I felt a wave of nausea, followed immediately by a surge of white-hot rage. This trip wasn't just a holiday. It wasn't just a family tradition. It was a stress test. They wanted to see if the system worked. They wanted to see if they could discard me physically while still retaining me financially. If I had stayed home and done nothing. If I had just texted them, "Okay, have fun." Nolan would have used this document to justify any spending he did. He would have told himself and me that he was just handling things in my absence. They didn't hate me. Hate would have been cleaner. They viewed me as a resource, a utility. I was the electric grid, and they were just plugging in their appliances. And when the grid malfunctioned, they didn't try to fix it. They tried to hotwire the fuse box. I closed the laptop with a snap. I couldn't stay here. If I stayed in this house, I would just be waiting for them to come back. I would be the angry daughter stewing in the kitchen. I would be the victim. I needed to be unavailable, not just emotionally, but physically. I looked around the kitchen. The dirty dishes were still there. The silence was still there. "No," I said. I stood up and walked to the hallway closet. I pulled out my suitcase, the small carry-on. Not the massive trunk I usually packed with everyone else's medical supplies. Where could I go? My mind flashed to a conversation from 3 years ago. I had wanted to go to Quebec City for Christmas. I wanted to see the stone streets of old Quebec covered in snow, to stay at the Chateau Frontenac, to speak my broken high school French and eat poutine. My mother had shot it down immediately. "Too cold," she had said. "And nobody speaks English there. It's too much hassle. Jade, let's just go to the lake again. The lake where I spent the entire week cooking for 12 people." I pulled out my phone. I didn't care about the price. I opened the airline app. There was a flight leaving from the main international airport at 5:45 p.m., one layover in Toronto, then landing in Quebec City by midnight. Business class. $2,400. I booked it. I didn't flinch at the cost. It was cheaper than the $16,000 I had just saved. I ran upstairs to my bedroom. I didn't pack the altitude sickness pills. I didn't pack the migraine medicine. I didn't pack the gluten-free snacks. I packed my thickest wool sweaters. I packed my shearling boots. I packed the silk dress I had bought for a date night that never happened. I packed 2 books I had been meaning to read for a year. I packed my passport. It took me 15 minutes. I showered, washing the stale smell of the morning off my skin. I dressed in comfortable travel clothes, cashmere joggers and a heavy coat. I looked in the mirror. I looked like a woman who was going somewhere, not a woman who had been left behind. I walked back down to the kitchen. I needed to leave a message. If I just vanished, they might actually call the police, not out of concern, but out of a need to control the narrative. I needed to make it clear that this was a choice. I grabbed a notepad from the counter, the one usually reserved for grocery lists. I took a Sharpie. I didn't write a letter. I didn't explain about the bank or the fraud or the hurt. I wrote 6 words. "I am on vacation. Don't look." I tore the page off and stuck it to the refrigerator door with a magnet. It sat there, a small white square against the stainless steel, right next to the calendar that still listed family trip for today. I walked to the front door. I keyed in the security code to arm the house. System armed. Away mode. I stepped out into the cold afternoon air. The Uber was already waiting at the curb. The driver, a middle-aged man with a kind face, popped the trunk. "Heading somewhere nice for the holidays?" he asked as he took my bag. "Yes," I said, and for the first time all day, my smile reached my eyes. Somewhere very cold and very far away. I got into the back seat. As the car pulled away, I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look at the empty driveway. The ride to the airport was a blur of gray highway and brake lights, but I felt none of the usual travel anxiety. Usually, I would be checking the flight status for 5 different people, holding the boarding passes, worrying about Marin's overweight luggage. Today, I just looked out the window, at the airport. I breezed through the priority lane. No herding cats, no waiting for Dad to find his ID, no apologizing for Mom's water bottle in the carry-on. I reached the security checkpoint. The TSA agent motioned me forward. "Phone and electronics in the bin, please." I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It was still off, a black slab of glass and metal. Inside that device, a war was raging. My family was likely melting down, screaming at hotel clerks, blaming each other, and leaving me voicemails that swung between begging and threatening. But here, in the plastic bin, it was silent. I pushed the bin onto the conveyor belt. I watched it disappear into the X-ray machine. I walked through the metal detector. Beep. "Step back, please," the agent said. "Check your pockets." I reached into my coat pocket. My fingers brushed against something hard and cold. It was the spare key to my parents' house. I had carried it on my keychain for 10 years. Just in case. I unhooked it from the ring. I looked at it for a second, a jagged piece of brass that represented a decade of being the backup plan. "Just a key," I said to the agent. I dropped it into the small bowl for loose change. I didn't pick it up on the other side. I walked through the scanner again. Silence. "You're good to go," the agent said. I grabbed my bag. I grabbed my phone. I left the key in the bowl. I walked toward the gate, my boots clicking rhythmically on the linoleum floor. The air in the terminal smelled of coffee and jet fuel, the scent of departure. I felt a sensation in my chest that was so unfamiliar, I almost didn't recognize it. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. It was lightness. I was untethered. The anchor had been cut. And as I looked up at the departure board, watching the letters flip over to reveal Quebec City on time, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't the ground crew, I was the pilot. The air in Quebec City smelled of wood smoke, roasted chestnuts, and something sharper, cleaner, the scent of deep winter that had not been trampled by 17 people trying to pack an SUV. I walked down the cobblestone streets of the Petit Champlain district, my boots crunching on the packed snow. It was Christmas Eve. Around me, the world was a postcard of golden lights and festive cheer. Strangers brushed past me, their breath puffing in little white clouds. They smiled. They apologized if they bumped into me. Nobody knew me here. To the couple taking a selfie by the funicular, I was just a woman in a camel coat drinking hot chocolate. To the shopkeeper who sold me a pair of hand-knit wool socks, I was just a polite tourist with decent French. None of them looked at me and saw a walking ATM. None of them saw a logistics manager. None of them saw a doormat. I sat down on a wrought iron bench near the Place Royale. My phone was in my pocket, still on Do Not Disturb. I had allowed exactly 2 numbers to bypass the silence, the fraud department of my bank and Sloan Mercer. I took a sip of the hot chocolate. It was rich and dark, coating my throat with warmth. For the first time in 4 months, my shoulders weren't touching my ears from tension. I wasn't wondering if Marin had remembered her lactose pills. I wasn't worrying if Dad had checked the tire pressure. But peace is a dangerous thing. It gives you space to think. And when I thought about the frantic attempts to access my bank account yesterday, the peace began to curdle into something colder. I needed professional armor. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sloan. She was a litigator at a top-tier firm in the city, a friend of a former colleague. We had bonded once over drinks about the horrors of contract law. Sloan was the kind of lawyer who didn't use 5 words when one would do, and who viewed emotions as inefficient data points. "Merry Christmas, Jade." Sloan answered on the second ring. Her voice was crisp, lacking the holiday slur of someone who had started drinking early. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Please tell me you aren't calling for bail." "Not bail," I said, watching a child chase a snowflake nearby. "Asset protection and potential restraining orders. I need to know where I stand legally if I lock my entire family out of my house." "Interesting," Sloan said. I could hear the click of a pen. "Start from the beginning, facts only, no sob stories." I gave her the timeline, the booking, the abandonment, the cancellation, the attempt by Nolan to add himself as an authorized user, the attempt to change my mailing address. When I finished, there was a brief silence on the line. "The credit card fraud is a police matter if you want to press it," Sloan said. "But the house is the bigger leverage point. You said you pay the mortgage. Whose name is on the deed?" "Mine," I said. "I took it over 3 years ago after my grandfather passed. My parents were living there, but they couldn't afford the upkeep, so I moved in and took over the payments. It was a transfer." "A transfer?" Sloan's voice sharpened. "Direct transfer." Or was it an inheritance vehicle? Because if your parents were living there and couldn't afford it, it sounds like there might be a trust involved. Wealthy patriarchs don't usually just hand over deeds to the youngest granddaughter unless they are trying to bypass the generation in the middle. I paused. My grandfather, Arthur Warren, had been a man of few words and strict principles. He loved my father, but he didn't respect him. He watched my dad drift from one failed business idea to another, always bailed out by family money. I think there was a trust, I said slowly, but I thought it was dissolved when the house was transferred to me. Trusts don't just dissolve, Jade. They execute. You need to check the paperwork. If you are the owner outright, you can evict them with standard notice. But if you are holding the property as a trustee, your power is actually absolute. You aren't just a landlord. You are the legal guardian of the asset. Hold on, I said. I switched the call to speaker and opened the Cloud Drive app on my phone. I navigated to the folder labeled Grandpa Arthur Legacy. I hadn't opened it since the funeral. It was a digital graveyard of PDF files. I scrolled past the funeral arrangements and the obituary drafts. There it was, a subfolder I had completely ignored in my grief. The Warren Family Irrevocable Trust Trustee Designation. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tapped the file. It downloaded slowly over the roaming data. The document opened. It was 40 pages of dense legal text. Scanned from the original parchment, I zoomed in on the signature page. Trustee Jade Elizabeth Warren, beneficiaries Robert Warren, Diane Warren might have habitation only, subject to trustee discretion. I read the clause under powers of the trustee. The trustee shall have the sole and exclusive authority to manage, lease, sell, or encumber the real property. The beneficiaries are granted a revocable license to occupy the premises, provided they maintain the property in good standing and adhere to the rules set forth by the trustee. The trustee may terminate this license immediately upon evidence of financial mismanagement or risk to the trust assets. I felt the blood drain from my face. Sloan, I whispered. I'm the trustee. My parents, they don't own the house. They have a revocable license to occupy. And let me guess, Sloan said, her voice sounding satisfied. They have been acting like they own it, and you are the tenant. Yes, my dad always says, this is a family house. He forbids me from changing the paint color in the living room. Well, he is wrong, Sloan said. Arthur Warren knew exactly what he was doing. He skipped your father because he knew your father would leverage the house for debt. He put you in charge because he trusted you to be the adult. Jade, you don't need to evict them. You just need to revoke their license. And considering Nolan tried to commit financial fraud against the trustee, you have grounds to claim the assets are at risk. I sat back on the bench. The cold air suddenly felt clarifying. For 3 years, I had walked around that house feeling like an intruder. I had tiptoed around my father's ego. I had apologized for taking up space. All this time, I had held the keys to the kingdom, and I hadn't even looked at the map. What do? I asked. You stop being a daughter, Sloan said. You start being a trustee. I want you to gather everything, the group chat logs, the timestamps of when they left you, the bank alerts showing Nolan's attempt to access your credit. That is evidence of financial predation. We are going to build a file that proves your family views you as a financial resource to be exploited, which justifies the trustee stepping in to protect the estate. They are going to hate me, I said. The old reflex was still there, the fear of their disapproval. They already ditched you at 4 a.m. Jade, Sloan cut in. They don't love you. They love what you provide. The moment you stop providing, the relationship ends anyway. The only choice you have is whether you end it on your feet or on your knees. Her words hit me like a splash of ice water. Okay, I said. I will get you the files. Good. Enjoy your poutine. When you get back, we are going into a board meeting, not a family reunion. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. The snow had started to fall harder, dusting the shoulders of my coat. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is hot and messy. What I felt now was the cold, sterile precision of a compliance audit. My grandfather had left me a weapon, and I had been using it as a doorstop. I spent the next 2 hours in a quiet bistro, ignoring the festive music. I opened my laptop and began to work. I created a new folder, Incident Report, December 23rd. I uploaded the screenshot of the Slay Team No Jade chat. I downloaded the transaction log from the bank, highlighting the 3 declined charges at the gas station and the motel. I saved the email notification regarding the authorized user request. I found the old email where Nolan had sent me the power of attorney form, and I flagged it as premeditated intent. It was a grim portfolio. It was the documentation of a relationship that had been rotting from the inside for years. When I was done, I ordered a glass of red wine and a plate of tortillere. I ate slowly, savoring the flaky crust and the spiced meat. I looked around the bistro. A family was sitting at the table next to me. The father was cutting his daughter's steak. The mother was wiping sauce off the son's face. They looked tired, but they were together. I felt a pang of longing, sharp and deep. I wanted that. I wanted a family that didn't require a $16,000 invoice to function. But I didn't have that. I had the Warren Trust, and I had a decision to make. I paid the bill and walked back out into the night. I found a quiet spot near the city walls, overlooking the St. Lawrence River. The water was dark and churning, filled with chunks of ice. I took out my phone and opened the camera. I switched it to video mode. I needed a witness, and since I was alone, the witness had to be me. I pressed record. The red dot pulsed. My face appeared on the screen, framed by the hood of my coat, lit by the street lamp. My eyes were clear. "My name is Jade Warren," I said to the camera. "It is December 24th. I am in Quebec City." I took a breath, watching the steam rise from my lips. I am recording this because I know myself. I know that when I go back, they will cry. Mom will say she was just stressed. Dad will say I am being dramatic. Marin will say she misses me. Nolan will say he loves me. I leaned closer to the lens. "Do not believe them," I said fiercely. "Remember how it felt to wake up to an empty house. Remember the name of their group chat. Remember that Nolan tried to steal your identity before he even called to ask where you were. If you soften, they will think you agree. If you forgive them without consequences, you are teaching them that this is acceptable." I paused, listening to the wind howl over the river. "You are not their daughter right now," I said. "You are the trustee. Protect the asset. Protect yourself." I stopped the recording. I saved it to the secure folder. I felt a strange sense of finality. The Jade who had baked gluten-free muffins and organized color-coded spreadsheets was gone. She had been left behind in that driveway. I opened the airline app. I didn't dread the return trip anymore. I wasn't going home to beg for forgiveness. I wasn't going home to fight. I booked a flight back for the morning of the 26th. I was going home to evict the tenants. I walked back toward the hotel, my steps matching the rhythm of the church bells ringing in the distance. The city was beautiful, but my holiday was over. I had work to do. The meeting was set, and for the first time in the history of the Warren family, I was the one sitting at the head of the table. The taxi from the airport dropped me off at the curb at 2:14 in the afternoon on December 26th. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with the threat of more snow, but the storm brewing inside my house was far more volatile. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, gripping the handle of my suitcase. The driveway, which had been blissfully empty 3 days ago, was now a parking lot of defeat. My father's SUV was parked crookedly, one wheel up on the lawn, suggesting a rage-filled arrival. Marin's convertible was jammed in behind it. Nolan's sedan was pulled up close to the garage door, blocking the path. They were all here. The ambush was set. I could feel the energy radiating from the house. It wasn't the warmth of a family gathering. It was the tense, static charge of a courtroom before the judge walks in. I took a breath of the icy air, holding it in my lungs until it burned, reminding myself of the promise I had made to the camera in Quebec City: do not soften. I walked up the path. I didn't fish for my keys. I punched the code into the smart lock: 4815. The mechanism whirred and clicked open. I pushed the door open and stepped into the foyer. The house was warm, stiflingly so. The smell of stale takeout pizza and tension hung thick in the air. "She's here," Marin's voice rang out from the living room, sharp and accusatory. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't take off my boots. I rolled my suitcase across the hardwood floor, the wheels rumbling like distant thunder, and walked into the living room. It was a tableau of staged disappointment. My mother, Diane, was sitting in the center of the beige sectional sofa. Her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was wearing her martyr cardigan, a gray wool thing she only wore when she wanted to project fragility. My father, Robert, sat in his leather armchair, his posture rigid, staring at the unlit fireplace as if it had personally offended him. Marin was pacing back and forth in front of the window, her phone in her hand, her thumb scrolling aggressively, and Nolan. He was standing by the mantelpiece, leaning against it with his arms crossed over his chest. He looked tired. He hadn't shaved in 2 days, and he was wearing the cashmere sweater I had bought him for his birthday. He looked at me with a mixture of relief and carefully rehearsed anger. Nobody said hello. Nobody stood up to hug me. "Jade," my mother said. Her voice was tremulous, pitched perfectly to sound like she was on the verge of tears. "Thank God. We were so worried. We thought you had snapped." I stopped in the center of the room, my hands resting on the handle of my suitcase. I looked at her. I didn't blink. "Worried," I repeated flatly. "Yes, worried," Marin snapped, spinning around to face me. "You disappeared. You turned off your phone. You left a cryptic note on the fridge like some kind of psychopath. Do you have any idea what you put us through?" "We didn't know if you were hurt," my mother added, leaning forward. "We didn't know if you were having a mental health crisis. We were terrified. Jade, we were ready to call the hospitals." I looked from my mother to my sister. It was a masterful performance. They were rewriting history in real time, casting themselves as the concerned victims of my instability. "You were worried," I said again, my voice devoid of inflection. "Is that why there are 17 voicemails on my phone demanding I reactivate my credit card? But not a single text asking if I was safe. We were trying to get your attention." My father barked from his chair. He didn't look at me. He was still staring at the fireplace. "You cut us off. You stranded your family in the middle of nowhere in freezing temperatures. You humiliated us in front of the gate guards. Do you know what it feels like to have a 20-year-old security guard tell you that you are denied access to your own vacation?" "It must have been very inconvenient," I said. "Inconvenient." Marin laughed, a shrill, hysterical sound. "It was a nightmare." "Jade." We had to drive back down the mountain. We had to stay in a Motel 6. A Motel 6, the sheets scratched. The heater smelled like burning dust. I couldn't even post anything because it was so embarrassing. My friends flew all the way from LA for a luxury retreat, and I had to put them in a roadside dive with a vending machine dinner. You ruined my brand credibility. "And the costs?" Nolan chimed in, stepping away from the mantel. His voice was softer. The good cop to their bad cop. He walked toward me, stopping just outside of arm's reach. "Jade, look. We know you were upset about us leaving early. Okay, we get it. It was a miscommunication. But to react like this, to nuke the entire trip, I had to put $3,000 on my emergency card just to house everyone for 2 nights before we gave up and drove back. That is money we were saving for the wedding." He looked at me with those puppy dog eyes that used to make me apologize for things I hadn't done. "You need to fix this," Nolan said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your dad is furious. Marin is a wreck. You need to apologize, transfer the funds to cover the motel costs, and maybe we can salvage the rest of the holiday. We can still do a late dinner. Just de-escalate this, please." I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the calculation behind the concern. He wasn't worried about my mental health. He was worried about the $3,000 balance on his credit card. I let go of my suitcase. It stood upright, a silent sentry beside me. "I am not going to apologize," I said. The room went silent. My mother gasped softly. "What did you say?" my father asked, finally turning his head to look at me. His face was red, the veins in his neck bulging. "I said I am not going to apologize," I said, my voice rising just enough to fill the room without shouting. "I listened to all of you. Now you are going to listen to me." "We don't have to listen to this disrespect," my father shouted, gripping the arms of his chair. "You are the one who acted out. You are the one who punished us because you felt left out." "I didn't feel left out, Dad," I said. "I felt used. There is a difference." "Used." My mother stood up, clutching her cardigan. "How can you say that? We include you in everything. We let you plan the trip because you like planning. We let you handle the details because you are good at it. We were doing you a favor." "A favor," I said. "Is that what you call it? Leaving me behind to clean up your breakfast dishes? Leaving me behind to drive the luggage van? Assigning me the room in the mudroom while you took the sweets?" "That was logistics," Nolan interrupted, holding up his hands. "Jade, be reasonable. You know you don't care about the view. You're never in the room anyway. You're making mountains out of molehills." "Am I?" I reached into my tote bag. My hand closed around the file folder I had prepared in the bistro in Quebec. It felt heavy, substantial. "You keep saying this was a miscommunication," I said. "You keep saying you left early to beat the traffic. You keep saying you love me." I pulled out the large, high-resolution printout of the screenshot. I had blown it up so the text was impossible to miss. I walked over to the coffee table and slapped the paper down on the glass surface. The sound was like a gunshot. "Then tell me," I said, pointing a finger at the paper. "Who came up with the name?" They all looked down. There it was, in black and white, magnified for their viewing pleasure. Slay Team No Jade. Nolan's face went pale. Marin stopped pacing. My mother squeezed her eyes shut. "And tell me," I continued, my voice cold and surgical, "who thought it was funny to joke about my credit card while I was sleeping? As long as Jade's card is on file, we're good. That was you, wasn't it, Nolan?" Nolan stammered. "It was a joke. It was just banter. Jade, you know how the group chat gets. We were just blowing off steam." "Banter," I repeated. "So my value to this family is a punchline. My value is a $16,800 credit limit." "You are taking it out of context," Marin yelled. But her voice lacked its earlier conviction. She crossed her arms defensively. "God, you are so sensitive. This is exactly why we made a separate chat, because you verify everything. You audit every joke. You are exhausting to be around." "I am exhausting because I am the only one carrying the load." I shot back. "I am the one who remembers the pills. I am the one who books the flights. I am the one who pays the bills. And the one single time I needed you to wait for me, to wake me up, to include me, you left me." "We didn't leave you," my mother cried out. "We just went ahead. You were supposed to follow." "No," I said. "I was supposed to serve. And when the server didn't show up, you got angry. That is not love. Mom, that is employment." "Stop it." My father slammed his hand on the armrest and stood up. He was a big man, and he used his size to intimidate. He walked toward me, looming over the coffee table. "I have had enough of this. You are acting like a spoiled brat. You think because you pay a few bills you can dictate how this family operates. You think you can hold us hostage with your money." "I am not holding you hostage," I said, standing my ground. I didn't flinch. "I am setting you free. I canceled the trip. You are free. I am free." "You have no right," my father roared. "This is a family decision. This is my house. This is my family, and you are tearing it apart because your feelings got hurt." "Your house?" I asked quietly. "Yes, my house." He gestured wildly at the walls. "I built this life. I raised you in this house. You live here because we allow it. You are ungrateful. We took you in when you were lonely. We let you be part of everything. And this is how you repay us, by throwing a temper tantrum and wasting money." I looked at him, and I felt a strange sense of pity. He truly believed it. He truly believed that I was the guest and he was the lord of the manor. He had forgotten the paperwork. He had forgotten the reality of who signed the checks. "I am not a guest, Dad," I said. "And I am not ungrateful. I am the only reason you still have a roof over your head." "How dare you?" my mother hissed. "How dare you speak to your father like that?" "I am speaking the truth," I said. "And the truth is, you didn't want me on that trip. You wanted my wallet. You wanted my labor. You proved it when you drove away." "It was 4 a.m, Nolan shouted, losing his composure. "We were excited. We made a mistake. Why can't you just let it go?" "Because you didn't just leave," I said, turning to look him dead in the eye. "You planned it. You talked about it. You named a group chat after my exclusion. That takes effort. That takes malice." I looked around the room one last time. The anger was gone, replaced by a profound disappointment. They weren't going to get it. They were never going to admit what they did was wrong. They were just angry that they got caught, and angrier that they got punished. "You say we are a family," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than any scream. I pointed at the timestamp on the screenshot on the table. 4:05 a.m. "If we are a family," I said, looking from my mother, to my father, to my sister, to the man I was supposed to marry, "then why did you have to sneak out like thieves in the night?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable. My father opened his mouth to yell again, but I didn't give him the chance. "Don't answer that," I said. "I already know the answer. You snuck out because you knew it was wrong, and you did it anyway." I reached down and grabbed the handle of my suitcase. "I am going upstairs," I said. "I suggest you use this time to think about your next move, because the bank is closed, the hotel is canceled, and the Jade you used to know." She didn't come back from Quebec. I turned my back on them. I heard Marin scoff. I heard my mother sobbing. I heard my father muttering curses. But nobody stopped me. I walked up the stairs, the wheels of my suitcase thumping rhythmically on the steps. Each thump felt like a gavel banging down. Order in the court. The evidence had been presented. The verdict was coming next. I paused on the third step of the staircase. My hand gripped the banister, the wood cool and smooth under my palm. I could hear Nolan's footsteps hurrying across the floorboards behind me, desperate and heavy. He was coming to smooth things over. He was coming to execute the same strategy he had used for 4 years' charm, deflect, and gaslight, until I apologized for being upset. "Jade, wait," Nolan said, his hand reaching out to grab the railing just below mine. "You are walking away in the middle of a conversation. That is not how we solve things. You are being irrational." I turned slowly. I was 2 feet above him. For the first time in our relationship, the physical dynamic matched the reality of our situation. I looked down at him. He was wearing his reasonable man face, the one he practiced in the mirror before client meetings. "Irrational," I repeated, tasting the word. "Is it irrational to secure my assets against theft? Nolan?" He blinked, taken aback by the word theft. "Theft? What are you talking about? Nobody stole anything. We used a card on file. We thought—" "I am not talking about the vacation booking," I cut him off. "I am talking about 12:22 in the afternoon on December 23rd. I am talking about the alert I received from the bank regarding an attempt to add a new authorized user to my Platinum account. An authorized user named Nolan Price." Nolan froze. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. His eyes darted to the side, a tell I had noticed during poker nights but had chosen to ignore. "That must have been a glitch," he stammered, his laugh nervous and hollow. "I was just trying to check the reservation details on the app. I must have clicked the wrong button. You know how bad the signal is in the mountains." "Don't," I said. My voice was a whip crack. "Do not insult my intelligence. I work in compliance. Nolan, I know the difference between a read-only view and a security clearance application. You had to input your social security number. You had to input your date of birth. You had to check a box consenting to a credit pull. Did the bad signal force your thumb to do all of that? He shifted his weight, his face flushing a deep, guilty red. Okay, fine. I tried to get access, but I did it for us. Jade. We were stranded. I needed to pay for the motel so your parents wouldn't freeze. I was trying to take care of the family because you had abandoned us. I was stepping up. You were stepping up into my credit limit, I corrected him. But that wasn't all, was it? I pulled my phone from my pocket. I didn't need to unlock it. I had the screenshot saved as my lock screen wallpaper for this exact moment. I turned the screen toward him. I went through our shared email account, I said, the one we use for wedding vendors, and I found the sent folder. Nolan went deadly silent. December 23rd, 12:30 p.m., I read aloud, my voice echoing in the silent hallway. Subject urgent credit line increase request. Body. Please increase the limit on the primary card ending in 4092 by $20,000 to accommodate immediate wedding-related expenses. Sent from the Jade and Nolan account. My mother and Marin had gathered at the bottom of the stairs, watching us with wide eyes. My father was standing by the living room archway, looking like he wanted to intervene but couldn't find an opening. You weren't just trying to pay for a motel, I said to Nolan. You were trying to leverage my anger. You thought if you got access, you could bump the limit up while I wasn't looking, claiming it was for the wedding, and secure a $20,000 cushion for yourself before I calmed down. You were looting the ship because you thought it was sinking. I was securing our future, Nolan shouted, finally dropping the mask of calm. We are getting married in 5 months, Jade. What difference does it make whose name is on the debt? It all becomes marital property anyway. I was just getting a head start. You are so obsessed with money it is sick. I am obsessed with money because I am the only one earning it, I said. I looked at my left hand. The diamond solitaire sparkled under the hallway chandelier. It was a ring I had picked out. It was a ring I had paid the deposit for because Nolan was short on liquidity that month. He had paid me back in installments, but the initial transaction was all me. It felt heavy. It felt like a shackle. I reached for my left hand with my right. I gripped the platinum band. Jade, don't, Nolan said, his voice cracking. He saw what I was doing. Don't do this. We can talk about this. I love you. You don't love me, I said, sliding the ring over my knuckle. It came off with a smooth, terrifying ease. You love the lifestyle I subsidize. You love the safety net. I held the ring out. I didn't throw it. Throwing it would be dramatic. And I was done with drama. I wanted this to be a transaction, a return of goods. I reached down and took his hand. I placed the ring into his palm and closed his fingers over it. His hand was cold and clammy. You aren't marrying me, Nolan, I said softly. You are marrying my bank account, and she just filed for divorce. Jade, my mother shrieked from the bottom of the stairs. She rushed forward, clutching the banister. You cannot be serious. You are throwing away a 3-year relationship over a credit card dispute. This is insane. You are destroying this family. I looked at my mother. Her face was twisted in that familiar mix of disappointment and panic she always wore when her comfort was threatened. I am not destroying the family, Mom, I said. I am stopping the sponsorship. There is a difference. Sponsorship. Marin stepped up, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured face. Is that what you think we are? Charity cases. I work hard. Jade, I have a brand. Do you know how humiliating this is for me? I haven't posted in 3 days because I don't want people to know I am sitting in my parents' living room instead of a luxury lodge. The pressure is eating me alive. The pressure. I looked at my sister. You are 30 years old. Marin, you live in a condo I co-signed for. You drive a car under my insurance policy. The pressure you feel is the weight of a lifestyle you cannot afford. And you are right. That pressure is terrible. But guess what? It is no longer my bill to pay. I opened my tote bag again. I pulled out a thick envelope. It was the package Sloane Mercer had couriered to my house before I arrived. I walked down the 3 steps to the landing so I was level with them. I handed the envelope to my father. What is this? He asked, staring at it like it was a bomb. "That is a formal notice of revocation," I said. "It was drafted by my attorney, Sloan Mercer. It states that effective immediately, all access to my financial accounts, credit lines, and insurance policies by any member of this family is terminated. It also includes a demand for the return of all physical keys to this property, as well as the key fobs for my vehicle." My father ripped the envelope open. He pulled out the documents, his eyes scanning the legal letterhead. "An attorney," he spat. "You sued your own family." "I didn't sue you," I said. "I served you notice. There is a difference. One implies a fight. This implies a decision that has already been made." Nolan was still standing on the step below the landing, clutching the ring. He looked at the papers in my father's hand, and a look of pure desperation crossed his face. He realized the walls were closing in. He realized the glitch wasn't going to be fixed. He lunged toward me. "Jade, stop," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Put the phone away. Put the papers away. Come into the kitchen with me. Just you and me. We need to talk privately. Without your parents." He reached for my hand, the hand holding my phone. His grip was tight, bordering on painful. He was trying to steer me, to physically move me into a space where he could use his height and his voice to intimidate me into submission. "Give me the phone. Jade," he muttered. "You are recording this, aren't you? You are paranoid. Give it to me." I didn't pull away. I didn't scream. I simply held my ground and tapped the screen with my thumb. "I am recording," I said loud and clear. "And I have been recording since I walked through the front door at 2:14 p.m. Everything you just said, the admission about the credit limit, the attempt to coerce me, the gaslighting is on the cloud." Nolan recoiled, as if I had burned him. He dropped my hand. "You set us up," he whispered. "I protected myself," I said. "And since we are talking about records, Nolan, you might want to check your email." He looked at me, confused. "Why?" "Because while I was in the taxi on the way here," I said, "I called the Sunset Ridge Country Club. I called the photographer. I called the florist. And I called the band." His eyes widened in horror. "No, you didn't. I canceled them all," I said. "Every single contract was in my name. Every single deposit was on my card. I informed them that the wedding is off and that any further inquiries should be directed to Mr. Price. I believe the venue has a cancellation fee of $5,000. Since the contract is voided, they will be billing you for the balance." "You can't do that," Nolan screamed. The sound was raw, the sound of a man watching his social standing evaporate. "I told my boss about that venue. I told my parents. You can't just cancel a wedding like it is a subscription." "I just did," I said. "And considering you tried to steal $20,000 from me via a credit limit increase, I think you got off cheap." My mother collapsed onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. "The shame," she wailed. "The absolute shame. How will we explain this to people? The invitations, the save the dates." "Tell them the truth," I said. "Tell them the bride found out the groom was more in love with her credit score than her heart." I looked at Marin. She had stopped crying. She was looking at me with a strange expression, not anger, but fear. She was realizing that the ATM wasn't just out of order, it was being removed from the premises. "And Marin," I said, "regarding your apartment, the lease renewal is coming up in February. I will not be co-signing. You have 30 days to find a new guarantor or a cheaper place." "You are making me homeless," Marin whispered. "I am making you an adult," I said. I turned back to the stairs. My legs felt shaky, not from fear, but from the massive release of adrenaline. It was done. The bridges were not just burned, they were detonated. My father crumpled the papers in his hand. "You think you are so smart," he sneered. "You think you can just dictate terms to us in my house? You forget who raised you. You forget who put a roof over your head." I stopped. I turned around one last time. "I haven't forgotten anything, Dad," I said. "But you seem to have forgotten who actually owns the roof." I pointed to the papers in his hand. Read the second page, I said. The section regarding the Warren Trust. We will discuss that tomorrow. Tonight, I'm going to sleep in my room, the master suite. Since I pay the mortgage, I think I have finally earned the view. Jade, Nolan called out, his voice cracking. Jade, please don't walk away. We can fix this. I can change. I looked down at him. He looked small. He looked like a stranger. You are used to ordering me around because you thought I would run to fix whatever you broke, I said. You thought I would run to pay the bill. You thought I would run to save face. I took a deep breath. But I am not running anymore, I said. Today, I am standing still. I turned and walked up the remaining stairs. I didn't look back. I walked down the hallway to the master bedroom, the room my parents had occupied for 20 years. I opened the door. It smelled like my mother's perfume. It was full of their things. I didn't care. I walked to the bed, stripped the duvet off, and threw it into the hallway. I closed the door. I locked it. And for the first time in my life, the sound of the lock clicking didn't feel like I was trapping myself in. It felt like I was finally keeping the world out. The morning sun that filtered through the dining room blinds was sharp and unforgiving. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air and the dark circles under my mother's eyes, but it did nothing to warm the temperature in the room. We were seated at the long mahogany dining table, a piece of furniture my grandfather, Arthur, had bought 50 years ago. My father sat at the head, a position he had assumed by default for decades. My mother was to his right, Marin to his left, Nolan was absent. Having fled to a hotel late last night after I evicted him from my floor, I sat at the opposite end of the table. Between us lay a vast expanse of polished wood, a demilitarized zone that was about to become a battlefield. My father made the first move. He didn't look tired. He looked emboldened. He had clearly spent the night making phone calls, probably to one of his golf buddies who practiced personal injury law in a strip mall. I have spoken to counsel, my father announced, his voice booming with a regained sense of authority. He placed his palms flat on the table, leaning forward. And let me tell you, Jade, you have overplayed your hand. You cannot kick us out. You cannot change the locks on the master bedroom, and you certainly cannot dictate financial terms to us. I didn't blink. I took a sip of my black coffee. Is that so? It is, he sneered. This is the marital home. Your mother and I have lived here for 22 years. We have established rights, squatters' rights, if you want to get technical, but more importantly, family rights. You might pay the mortgage, but that is considered a gift under the law unless there is a written contract stating otherwise. You can't just decide one day that you are the landlord. He sat back, crossing his arms, looking smug. So, here is what is going to happen. You are going to unlock the master suite. You are going to apologize to Nolan and invite him back, and we are going to forget this insanity happened. If you don't, I will sue you for constructive eviction and emotional distress. I will drag you through court until you are bankrupt. Do not think I won't do it just because you are my daughter. You clearly don't respect me as a father, so I won't treat you as a daughter. I will treat you as a defendant. Marin nodded vigorously. Yeah, Jade. You can't just steal the house. I looked at them. I looked at the arrogance that masked their terror. They truly believed that their tenure in this house was a divine right, solidified by time and my own passivity. I reached down to the floor beside my chair. I picked up a heavy navy blue expandable folder. It wasn't a sleek modern binder. It was old, the edges slightly frayed, the label typewritten on a manual machine. I slid it across the mahogany table. It spun slowly, coming to a rest right in front of my father. Open it, I said. My father looked at the folder with disdain. What is this? More spreadsheets, more bills. It is the deed, I said, and the trust instrument that governs it. He scoffed and flipped the cover open. I know what the deed says. Jade. It says Warren. That is me. Keep reading, I said softly. Read the line under the grantee. My father squinted at the yellowed paper. I saw his eyes scan the lines. I saw the moment his brow furrowed. I saw the moment the blood drained from his face. "The Warren Family Irrevocable Trust," he read, his voice losing its boom. "Arthur James Warren, grantor. Jade Elizabeth Warren, sole trustee." He looked up, confusion warring with anger. "What is this Dad left the house to me? He told me." He said, "Robert, the house is yours to raise the girls in." "He left the house for you to use," I corrected him. "He never left it to you to own. Grandfather knew you. Dad, he knew you had a gambling problem in the 90s. He knew about the failed restaurant venture in 2008. He knew that if he put your name on the title, you would leverage this house against a loan within 6 months, and we would have lost it years ago." I leaned forward, clasping my hands. "So he created a bypass trust," I explained, using the tone I used when explaining regulatory failures to CEOs. "He skipped a generation. The ownership of this property transferred directly from his estate into the trust, and he named me the only person in this family with a credit score over 700 as the trustee. But I am the beneficiary," my father sputtered, flipping through the pages frantically. "It says right here, beneficiaries Robert and Diane Warren. Read the clause defining the beneficiary rights," I said. "Page 12, paragraph 4. My father ripped the page over. "The beneficiaries shall enjoy a right of habitation," he read, his voice trembling. "Subject to the terms set forth by the trustee." "Subject to the terms," I repeated. "That means your right to live here is not a property right. It is a license. It is a permission slip. And as the trustee, I am the teacher who signs the slip." "This is a trick," my mother whispered. "Your grandfather wouldn't do this. He loved us." "He loved you enough to make sure you had a roof over your heads," I said. "But he didn't trust you enough to give you the keys to the kingdom. He gave them to me." I reached into my own portfolio and pulled out 3 fresh, crisp documents. I slid one to my father, one to my mother, and one to Marin. "What is this?" Marin asked, picking up the paper as if it were contaminated. "That," I said, "is a residential lease agreement." My father stared at the document. "A lease. You want to charge us rent." "In my own house." "It is not your house," I said, my voice hardening. "We have just established that it is the trust's house, and as the trustee, I have a fiduciary duty to ensure the trust's assets are generating value and are protected from liability. For the last 3 years, I have allowed you to live here rent-free, effectively subsidizing your lifestyle to the tune of $4,000 a month, not including utilities, insurance, and taxes. That ends today." I pointed to the figure on the first page. "The new rent is set at market rate for a 4-bedroom home in this zip code," I stated. $4,200 a month, plus a flat fee of $500 for utilities. Marin, since you occupy the second largest suite and use the garage for your studio, your portion is $1,500. Mom and Dad, your portion is $3,200. "I don't have $1,500 a month," Marin shrieked, dropping the paper. "I am building a brand. My income is fluctuating. You can't do this." "Then you need a job," I said. "Not a brand, not a vacation. You need a W-2 form. Marin, Starbucks is hiring. So is the Amazon warehouse. If you want to live in a luxury home, you pay luxury prices. If you can't afford it, there are very affordable apartments in the next town over." "Jade, please," my mother said, tears welling up again. She reached across the table, trying to grab my hand, but I pulled it back. "We are your parents. We changed your diapers. We sent you to college. You can't treat us like tenants. Can't we just go back to how it was? We will be nicer. We will include you. We promise." "This isn't about being nice, Mom," I said, "and it isn't about the past. It is about the fact that yesterday, your future son-in-law tried to defraud me, and you defended him. You proved that you view my financial health as a communal pot for you to raid." I looked at my father, who was turning a shade of purple I had never seen before. "You mentioned suing me," I said to him. "You mentioned family rights. Let me direct your attention to page 30 of the trust document, The liquidation clause. My father froze. He evidently hadn't gotten that far. Grandpa Arthur was very specific, I said. He included a bad actor provision. It states that if any beneficiary attempts to undermine the financial solvency of the trustee or attempts to claim ownership contrary to the trust's title, the trustee has the immediate power to convert the right of habitation into a month-to-month tenancy or, if necessary, liquidate the asset and evict the occupants to preserve the equity. I paused to let the legal weight of those words crush the air out of the room. By threatening to sue me for ownership, I said quietly, you just triggered the bad actor clause. Dad, you tried to claim title. That gives me the legal right to kick you out this afternoon. My father slumped in his chair. The bluster was gone. The golf buddy lawyer advice had evaporated in the face of a 40-page estate plan drafted by one of the best firms in the state 30 years ago. He realized that for 3 decades, he had been living in a house of cards, and I was the wind. You wouldn't, he whispered. You wouldn't put your parents on the street. I don't want to, I said, which is why I printed the leases. I tapped the paper in front of him. You have 30 days, I said. The lease starts on February 1st. You will sign it, and you will set up an automatic transfer for the rent, or by February 1st, you will vacate the premises. And if we don't, Marin challenged, though her voice was weak. Then I will file for formal eviction, I said. And since I am the trustee, I will win. It will be public record. Good luck renting a decent apartment with an eviction on your credit report. Marin, the room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator, the same refrigerator I had stood in front of yesterday morning, realizing I was alone. What about the arrears? I asked, adding one final twist of the knife. Technically, I could sue you for back rent for the last 3 years. That is roughly $140,000. My mother gasped, clutching her chest. But I am generous, I said. I will waive the back rent. Consider it my parting gift for the family services you claim to have provided. But moving forward, the free ride is over. I stood up. I buttoned my blazer. I felt 10 feet tall. I am going to work, I said. I expect those leases signed and on the kitchen counter by tonight. If they aren't, I will call the real estate agent tomorrow to list the house for sale. And Grandpa gave me the right to do that, too. My father didn't look up. He was staring at the blue folder, running his finger over the name Arthur Warren, as if asking his dead father why he had betrayed him. But Arthur hadn't betrayed him. Arthur had simply known that one day the grasshopper would come for the ant's winter stores, and he had given the ant a shotgun. 30 days, I repeated. I walked out of the dining room. I grabbed my keys from the bowl. I walked out the front door and into the cold, gray morning. I didn't have anywhere specific to go. My office was closed for the holidays, but I drove to a coffee shop, sat down, and opened my laptop. I had one more loose end to tie up. The engagement was over. The house was secured. Now, I needed to deal with Nolan's little investment strategy. The silence in the house following the lease ultimatum was deceptive. It was not the quiet of surrender. It was the quiet of an insurgency regrouping in the shadows. For the next 48 hours, I became the subject of a carefully orchestrated smear campaign. It started subtly. I would walk into the kitchen and conversation would stop abruptly. My mother would be on the phone, whispering frantically, only to hang up the moment I poured my coffee. But the digital world was less discreet. My cousin Tyler, the one who had laughed in the group chat, posted a long, vague status update on Facebook about how mental health issues are real and how pride can destroy families. Tagging my mother and Marin. My Aunt Carol left me a voicemail, her voice dripping with that poisonous concern that is unique to Southern women. Jade, honey, she said, your mother tells me you are having a breakdown. I know the holidays are stressful, and work has been hard, but threatening your own parents. We are all praying for you to find your center again. They were painting a narrative, in their version of the story. I wasn't the victim of financial abuse. I was the overworked, hysterical spinster who had snapped under pressure and was now lashing out at the people who loved her. They were building a defense for when I eventually kicked them out. They wanted to be able to say, "Poor Jade. She lost her mind and threw us on the street." But I didn't care about their narrative. I cared about the data. I sat in my home office, the door locked, and monitored the incoming fire. An email arrived from Nolan at 10:30 in the morning. The subject line was simply, "Us." I opened it. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. "Jade," it read, "I know you are hurting. I know I messed up by joking about the card. It was insensitive, and I own that. But looking back at the last few days, I think we both know this isn't about money. It is about trust. You feel unsafe. I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you need. I want to fix this. But I can't fix it if you keep me locked out. Please, unlock the cards. Not so I can spend, but so I can see the statements. I want to go through them with you line by line. I want to show you that I am responsible. If you reopen the account, I promise I will deposit my next paycheck directly into it to help cover the cancellation fees. Let me step up. Let me be the man you fell in love with." I read it twice. To an outsider, it might have sounded sincere. Let me step up. But I was a risk analyst. I looked for the conditionality. If you reopen the account. He didn't offer to deposit his paycheck into my personal account to pay me back. He wanted the credit line reopened. He wanted to prove himself by regaining access to the very tool he had abused. He was trying to negotiate a hostage release, and the hostage was his lifestyle. I didn't reply. I simply dragged the email into the folder labeled Evidence. Then, the red light flashed on my banking dashboard again. Alert address. Change request. Initiated via phone support. My heart skipped a beat. I had locked everything down. I had set a verbal passphrase. How were they getting through? I called the bank immediately. "This is the fraud department," the agent said. "We just blocked an attempt to change your billing address to a post office box in Jackson Hole, Wyoming." "I am in my house," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "I did not authorize that. Who called?" "It was a female caller," the agent said. "She had your social security number and your mother's maiden name. She claimed to be you. She said she had lost her voice due to a cold, which is why she sounded different, but she failed the verbal passphrase you set up yesterday. She couldn't name the compliance software." A female caller. It wasn't my mother. My mother didn't know how to navigate a phone tree. It was Marin, or maybe Aunt Carol. It didn't matter who physically held the phone. It was a coordinated attack. They were trying to reroute my mail so they could intercept the new cards or the legal notices I was generating. "Flag it," I commanded, "and send me the recording of the call if possible. I need it for legal proceedings." I hung up and dialed Sloan Mercer. "They are impersonating me now," I told her. "Identity theft, attempted wire fraud." "That is a federal crime," Sloan said, her voice sharp. "We are done playing nice with the lease agreements. Jade, I am drafting a cease and desist order for Nolan Price and a separate one for Jane Doe regarding the impersonation. I will have a process server deliver them to the house within the hour. It will scare the hell out of them." "Do it," I said, "and add a clause that any further attempts to contact my financial institutions will result in an immediate filing of criminal charges." I hung up. I felt cold. But it was the cold of a weapon being forged. They thought they were poking a bear. They didn't realize they were dismantling a bomb. An hour later, there was a soft knock on my office door. "Jade." It was Marin. Her voice was small, childlike. I didn't unlock the door. "What do you want?" "Marin." "I brought you something," she said. "Can I come in?" "Just for a second, please. I don't want to fight anymore." I debated it. Then I stood up and unlocked the door. Marin stood there holding a small gift bag and a steaming mug of tea. She was wearing her oversized pajamas, looking vulnerable and young. She held out the bag. "I picked this up for you before everything happened," she said. "I was going to give it to you on the mountain. It's that candle you like, the one that smells like cedar." I took the bag. I didn't look inside. "Thank you. I miss you." "Jade," Marin said, her eyes filling with tears. "I miss us. You used to be my best friend. Remember when we drove to the coast that one summer? Just us? I want that back. I hate this tension. Mom and Dad are losing their minds. Nolan is sleeping in his car. Can't we just hit reset? I promise I will get a job. I promise. Just stop the legal stuff. It's scaring everyone. She reached out and touched my arm. We are family, she whispered. Family fixes things. For a second, I felt the old tug, the instinct to smooth it over, to hug her and say it was okay. She was my little sister. Then she spoke again. By the way, she said, her voice dropping a fraction of an octave, did the resort process the refund yet? The $16,000? Because if they did, maybe you could use that to help Dad with the first month's rent, just until he gets on his feet. The warmth in my chest turned to ice. She hadn't come to apologize. She had come to locate the funds. She wanted to know if the $16,800 was back in my liquid assets, so they could cannibalize it to pay the rent I was charging them. It was a circular scheme. They wanted to pay me with my own money. The refund is under review, I lied smoothly. And Marin, the rent is due on the 1st. I suggest you start selling some of those designer bags if you are short on cash. I closed the door in her face. I heard her gasp, and then the sound of her footsteps stomping away, heavy and angry. The mask had slipped so quickly it was almost impressive. I realized then that I couldn't keep the trust documents in the house. If they were willing to impersonate me on the phone, they were willing to pick a lock. I packed the blue folder, the lease agreements, and my passport into my tote bag. I waited until I heard them all in the kitchen, arguing about who was going to cook lunch since the staff me was on strike. I slipped out the side door. I drove to the hardware store first. I bought a new high-security deadbolt for my office door. I bought a new smart lock for the garage that required a fingerprint. I bought a video doorbell with cloud storage that I alone controlled. Then I drove to the bank. I walked into the vault room. The air was cool and smelled of money and dust. I opened my safety deposit box. I placed the Warren family irrevocable trust deed inside. I placed the original birth certificates inside. I placed the car titles inside. I was physically removing their ability to leverage any asset. Without these papers, they couldn't take out a loan. They couldn't sell anything. They were ghost passengers in a vehicle I was driving. As I was leaving the bank, my phone pinged with a notification from a wedding vendor portal I thought I had scrubbed. It was a contract alert. New document uploaded platinum honeymoon package, Bora Bora. Status, signed by guarantor. Date signed, December 20th. I froze on the sidewalk. Bora Bora. A $25,000 package. I opened the document on my phone. There was my signature, Jade Warren, but I hadn't signed it. I looked at the metadata. The document had been signed electronically using an IP address that matched Nolan's office. He had signed a contract for a luxury honeymoon 5 days ago, listing me as the financial guarantor in case of default. And he hadn't told me. He had planned to surprise me with the trip, knowing that if we broke up or couldn't pay, the travel agency would come after me, not him. This wasn't just a breach of trust. This was forgery. This was the smoking gun I didn't even know I needed. I stood there on the busy street, people rushing past me with their post-Christmas returns, and I felt a terrifying clarity. I wasn't just evicting them, I was dismantling them. I drove back to the house. I installed the new locks myself, the drill whining loudly in the afternoon silence. I installed the camera. I changed the garage code and deleted their remotes from the system. Then I went to my office and printed everything. The phone logs, the email from Nolan, the forged honeymoon contract, the transcript of the impersonation call, the trust deed, the lease agreements, the eviction notice template. I arranged them into 4 neat piles. I looked at the clock. It was 5 in the afternoon. I sent a text to the group chat, not the Slay Team chat, the real one. Jade dining room. 10 minutes. Everyone, including Nolan. If he is not here, I'm calling the police to report a forgery. I waited. I heard the front door open. Nolan must have been waiting in the driveway. I heard whispering. I heard my father's heavy tread. I walked out to the dining room. They were all there again, but the arrogance from this morning was gone. They looked ragged. They looked like people who had spent the last 48 hours trying to find a loophole and realizing there wasn't one. Nolan looked particularly ill. He saw the stack of papers in front of me and wiped sweat from his upper lip. I didn't sit down. I stood at the head of the table. "This is the last time we are going to have this conversation," I said. "There will be no more negotiation. There will be no more emotional appeals. There will be no more gifts." I picked up the first document, the honeymoon contract. "Nolan," I said, "you signed my name to a $25,000 travel contract on December 20th. That is felony forgery." My mother gasped. "He wanted to surprise you. He committed a crime." I slammed the paper down. "And today, someone called my bank pretending to be me. That is identity theft. I have the recording. The police are very interested in listening to it." Marin shrank back in her chair, looking at her nails. "I have prepared a file," I said, gesturing to the stack. "It contains evidence of financial fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized access to protected accounts. I am ready to hand this entire file over to the district attorney tomorrow morning." "Jade, you can't," my father croaked. "He is your fiancé. Marin is your sister. You would send them to jail." "I would protect the trust," I said coldly, "but I am giving you one final option, a plea deal. If you will." I pushed the stack of lease agreements toward them. "Option A," I said. "Dad and Mom, you sign the lease, you pay the rent. Marin, you sign the lease, or you move out. Nolan, you sign a confession admitting to the forgery, which I will hold in a safe deposit box. If you ever try to access my credit again, I release it to the police, and you leave this house tonight and never come back." I took a breath. "Option B," I continued. "Nobody signs anything. I call the police right now. I report the forgery. I report the wire fraud. I file for immediate emergency eviction based on criminal activity in the home. You will be removed by sheriff's deputies within 24 hours. The silence was absolute. The air in the room felt vacuum-sealed. I reached into my bag and pulled out a plain manila envelope. I placed it on top of the pile. "And this," I said, "is my choice." I looked at them. I looked at the people who had raised me to be a servant. I looked at the man who had engaged me to be a wallet. "I am done explaining myself," I said. "You have until the sun goes down to sign. If the papers aren't signed by 5:30, I make the call." I turned and walked toward the kitchen to pour myself a glass of water. I didn't need to watch them read. I knew what they would do. They were cowards, and cowards always sign the deal to save their own skin. But as I reached for the glass, I realized my hand wasn't shaking. Not even a little. The daughter was gone. The trustee was in residence, and the house was finally under new management. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long, bruised shadows across the dining room table. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, marking the seconds. It was 5:28 in the afternoon. 2 minutes remained until the deadline I had set. The atmosphere in the room wasn't just tense, it was terminal. My father, Robert, sat with his head in his hands, staring at the lease agreement as if the words might rearrange themselves into an apology. My mother, Diane, was weeping softly into a tissue, a sound that used to shatter my resolve, but now just sounded like white noise. Marin was chewing on her thumbnail, her eyes darting between the door and the pen I had placed in front of her. And Nolan was pacing. He stopped near the window, turning to face me with a look that was equal parts desperation and calculated charm. He was going to try one last time. He was going to play the us card. "Jade, look," he started, his voice dropping to that husky, intimate register he used when he wanted me to buy him something expensive. "We are all tired. We are all emotional. I know you are angry, and you have every right to be, but this," he gestured to the stack of legal documents, "this isn't you. This is cold. This is corporate. You are a warm, loving woman. You are the woman I asked to marry me. Don't let a bad vacation destroy a lifetime of love. Tear up the papers, baby. Let's just order pizza, hug it out, and start over." My mother looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Please, Jade, just listen to him. We are family. I looked at them. They still didn't get it. They thought this was a negotiation. They thought I was holding out for a better offer of affection. I didn't say a word. I simply reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen and connected it to the Bluetooth speaker that sat on the sideboard. You talk about love, Nolan, I said, my voice steady. But I think we should listen to what you sound like when you think I am not in the room. I pressed play. The audio was crisp. It was from the recording I had made earlier that afternoon, when he had tried to corner me in the hallway, combined with a snippet from a voicemail he had left Marin that I had intercepted during my audit of the family plan. Nolan's voice filled the room. She is going to cave. She always caves. I just need to scare her a little. Once we get access to the credit line again, I am bumping the limit to $50,000. We need that cushion for the wedding. If she complains, I will just tell her it is for our future. She is so desperate to be a wife she will sign anything. The silence that followed was heavier than lead. Nolan's face turned a sickly shade of gray. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The charm was gone. The mask had been ripped off. Not by me, but by his own arrogance. I stopped the recording. She is so desperate to be a wife she will sign anything, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. That is what you think of me. That is what you all think of me. I walked over to the table and picked up the 3 distinct piles of evidence I had prepared. I laid them out like tarot cards of their destruction. Exhibit A, I said, pointing to the blown-up screenshot of the Slay Team No Jade chat. The proof that my exclusion was premeditated and mocked. Exhibit B, I pointed to the bank logs showing the unauthorized user attempt and the wire fraud call. The proof that my assets were targeted the moment I stopped providing them voluntarily. Exhibit C, I pointed to the Warren Trust deed and the lease agreements. The reality of who owns the ground you are standing on. I looked at Nolan. You don't have a fiancé anymore. Nolan, you have a plaintiff. Jade, he whispered, stepping toward me. I didn't mean it like that. I was just venting. I love you. Stop, I said. It is over. And just so there is no confusion, I have already contacted the Wedding Vendor Association. I have formally canceled the venue, the caterer, the band, and the florist. I sent them copies of the contracts showing you as the guarantor for the cancellation fees since you forged my signature on the honeymoon package. You are looking at roughly $12,000 in debt that is entirely yours. I suggest you start driving for Uber. Nolan looked as if I had punched him in the gut. He realized there was no coming back. The cushion he wanted was gone. The lifestyle was gone. My father slammed his hand on the table, startling Marin. Enough, he shouted. We get it. You made your point. You humiliated the boy. But you cannot do this to us. Jade, we are your parents. We raised you. You talk about this, trust like it is a weapon. But your grandfather never intended for you to lord it over us. He wanted to protect the family. He did want to protect the family, I replied, my voice calm, almost gentle. He wanted to protect the family from you, Dad. My father recoiled. Grandpa Arthur told me something the day he signed the papers, I said. I was only 21. I didn't understand it then. He said, Jade, your father has a hole in his pocket where his pride should be. He will spend everything to look like a king. One day, you will have to be the one to tell him the kingdom is closed. I didn't want to believe him. I spent 13 years trying to prove him wrong. I spent $16,800 on a vacation trying to prove him wrong. I looked at my mother. But he was right. You didn't raise a daughter. You raised an insurance policy. And today, the policy expired. Marin burst into tears. Real, ugly tears this time. I can't pay rent, she wailed. I really can't. I have $0 in my savings account. If you kick me out, I have nowhere to go. I looked at my sister. For years, I had cushioned her from reality. I had paid her car notes. I had loaned her rent money I never asked back. I had crippled her by never letting her fall. Then you have a choice, I said. You sign the lease. You have 30 days to find a job and pay the first month's rent. If you can't pay, You move out, or you don't sign, and you leave tonight. Those are the options. Welcome to the real world. Marin, it is expensive. My father picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He looked at the lease agreement, $4,200 a month. He knew he couldn't afford a house like this on the open market. He knew he was trapped. If we sign, my father said, his voice low and defeated. If we pay, then what? You are going to walk around here acting like the landlord. You are going to inspect our rooms. You are going to make our lives a living hell. No, I said. I won't be doing any of that. I reached into my bag and pulled out the final document. The one I hadn't shown them yet. The twist that would lock the knot forever. I realized that mixing family and business is messy, I said, and as long as I am the one collecting the check, you will try to manipulate me. You will be late. You will make excuses. You will ask for family discounts. I placed the document on top of the leases. So this afternoon, I said, I signed a contract with Ironclad Property Management. My father stared at me. What? I have transferred the day-to-day management of the Warren Trust assets to a third-party firm. I explained. Starting February 1st, you do not pay me. You pay them. You do not call me when the sink leaks. You call them. If you are late on rent, I won't know about it. Their automated system will simply issue an eviction notice after 5 days. I have removed myself from the equation entirely. The color drained from my mother's face. You hired strangers to manage us. I hired professionals to manage the property, I corrected. I am just the trustee. I am a silent partner. I will not be living here anymore. I am moving into a condo downtown closer to my office. You have the house. You have the lease. But you do not have access to me. This was the blow that finally broke them. They realized that their power lay in their ability to guilt-trip me. They relied on the fact that I was in the room, that I could be worn down by tears and shouting. By removing myself physically and inserting a faceless corporation between us, I had stripped them of their only weapon. You can't leave, my mother whispered. Who will help us organize things? Who will take care of us? You are adults, I said. You will figure it out. I looked at the clock. 5:30. Time is up, I said. My father picked up the pen. He signed the lease. He pushed it across the table without looking at me. My mother signed next, her hand trembling so bad the signature was barely legible. Marin signed last, sobbing the entire time. I took the papers. I checked the signatures. Valid. I put them in my folder. Then I turned to Nolan. You didn't get a lease, I said. He looked up at me, his eyes red. Jade. Get out, I said. Now, if you are not off the property in 5 minutes, I am calling the police to report the forgery. That is the only deal you get. Nolan stood up. He looked around the room, waiting for someone to save him. My father looked at the floor. My mother looked at the wall. Marin was busy contemplating her own poverty. Nobody moved to help him. He looked at me one last time, hatred burning in his eyes. You are cold, Jade. You are going to end up alone. Better alone than bought, I said. He turned and walked out. I heard the front door slam. The sound echoed through the house, a final punctuation mark on a 3-year mistake. I picked up my tote bag. I had my folder. I had my freedom. The property manager will be in touch regarding the deposit and the key handover protocols. I said to my parents, I suggest you read the lease carefully. They are very strict about late fees. Where are you going? My mother asked, her voice sounding very small in the large room. I am going to finish my Christmas vacation, I said. I have a flight to book. I walked to the front door. I stepped out into the crisp evening air. The stars were out. The driveway was still crowded with cars, but the path forward was wide open. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look back at the window where I knew they were watching. I walked to my car, got in, and started the engine. As I pulled away, leaving the Warren Family Trust asset behind me, I felt a sense of peace so profound it almost made me dizzy. I hadn't destroyed them. I hadn't ruined their lives. I had simply forced them to live the lives they could afford. I drove toward the city lights, the heater humming, the radio playing a soft jazz tune. I spoke out loud to the empty car, a smile finally touching my lips. "I didn't cancel your Christmas," I said. "I just canceled your access to me." Thank you so much for listening to Jade's story of reclaiming her worth. I would love to know where you are listening from. Are you tuning in from a cozy bedroom in London, a busy commute in New York, or maybe a quiet cafe in Sydney? Please let me know in the comments below. I love reading about where our community is growing. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this story get heard by more people who might need the courage to set their own boundaries. See you in the next story.